Okay, welcome back to the SARGEinc podcast, episode number 22. This is episode number 2 of the relaunched SARGEinc podcast. I'm still shopping the name. The current leader in the clubhouse, is the SARGEinc podcast. But number 2 and a close second is With That Being Said, which is a thing I say a lot. So, with that being said, that is very seriously what I'm considering changing the name of this podcast to. But anyways, episode 1 was about politics, and episode 2 will not be about politics. In that first episode, I spoke, and I think I said that episode 2 is going to be with my friend Dustin, who was the original guest on the first edition SARGEinc podcast. I believe I said he was going to come on, and he was going to be the first guest of the relaunch. But he's just been busy. I've been busy. He's been busy. He's been moving. So he will be on, but I decided I need to do another solo podcast first. And as a side note, Ken Veranimus, I do not know what his real name is. That's his Instagram. He, on something I posted about the contents of my bag. So if you don't know, I carry a huge, like a backpacking, it's a large backpacking bag. It's from Walmart. But it's like, whatever, a 30-liter pack that I've been carrying every day to work. So I did a little contents video of what's in the bag because my sister, she saw the bag that I take to work and was like, "Are you serious? You take that to work every day?" And I was like, "Yeah, like why wouldn't I? I need to be prepared." So I did a little video. And then he commented, he's like, "I can't wait for D-Bucks Production," which is my buddy Dustin's Instagram handle. He's like, "I can't wait for D-Bucks Productions to roast you on it." And I honestly, I've never met this guy. I don't even know his real name. I think he's an Astrovan guy. But little Dustin, I shouldn't call him little Dustin. He was so thrilled that he has a fan that he's never met us, but he just listened to the podcast before. And he follows me on Instagram, at SARGEinc. Follow me on Instagram. And he was playing along, and he knows Dustin likes to roast me. And frankly, I like to be roasted by Dustin. I like talking shit, and I like shit being talked back at me. I think it's fun. Feel free to talk shit to me in the comments. Also, rate me 5 stars. All that jazz. Anyways, with that being said, Dustin was very thrilled to have a fan, and he will be on the podcast. I don't know for sure if it'll be next episode. Maybe it'll be the one after that. But this episode will not be politics, even though today was the day that Donald Trump launched tariffs, 25% tariffs on Canada. So I'm pissed. But I'm not going to talk about that. What I am going to talk about, there's a few things I'm going to talk about. But I think the big topic of the day, I'm going to talk about the last 2 videos I made on YouTube where I did the hike the Rockwall Trail. And I was also in Banff. And I spiraled out. I think my video is called Riding an Emotional Roller Coaster Through Banff, which is what I did, and Banff sucks. But it all kind of related to the Rockwall. And I think there's just some stories and some just interesting things to talk about the Rockwall. You do not have to have watched those videos to enjoy this podcast. It'll be fine without, but if you do, I think it'll be interesting context. And I'm just going to talk about that. So, with that being said, I do think that has to be the name of this podcast. I did not realize how much I say that, but I think it's going to have to be the name. It technically is already taken by some other podcasts, but, I think with that being said, by SARGEinc, it's totally fine if I steal somebody's name. It's not like I'm stealing, a giant podcast name. I am naming something the same, and unless it's copyrighted, I don't know any of the legalities of that. But, Is laws even legal now? Like, it doesn't even matter. You can do what you want. So I think that'll be the podcast, but who knows? Anyways, before I talk about Banff and how much I hate it and the Rockwall Trail, I just want to say that, first of all, I'm not having a video this week, like on my main channel video. So that's why part of the reason I'm doing this podcast. But it was my birthday last Monday. So I tried to get out of town to celebrate it, and I was going to make a little vlog of me going out of town with my dog and doing some camping and visiting my parents, having ice cream cake, and going to an independent wrestling show. My sister who is, she's going to be on this podcast one of these days. And we'll probably talk about this, but she's a degenerate wrestling fan. So she goes to all these independent wrestling shows. So there's one up in the Okanagan, and we were going to go up there as a family to celebrate my birthday. But as I was driving up there, I got about an hour out of town. Coming outside of Hope, I don't know if anyone knows the local geography, but I left Abbotsford, drove all the way to Chilliwack, to Hope. I'm doing good, get on Highway 3, and I'm bombing up a hill to get out of town. And as I'm going, my van just doesn't feel right. It's like stuttering, like just doesn't feel right. So I was like, you know what? I don't really like wrestling. So I just turned around. So I bailed on my own birthday party because my van didn't feel right. So then I came home, did a bunch of yard work because it was the nicest weekend of the year. It felt very springy. It's so springy, in fact, my neighbors planted a garden, which I am confident is going to die because it is still winter. Winter ends on March 21st. So if you plant a garden in the early beginning part of March, you know it's probably going to die. So that's a bummer for him. Anyways, I did some yard work, and then I worked on my van. Basically, the plan, I'll probably have a video come out of it, but when I was filming the video, I was very unenthused about the video because my van was dying, and I was sad because it was my birthday, and I was instead working on my van. But basically, the plan of attack is just to do a tune-up and go from there. It still drives. It drove home fine after I turned around. It drove home, which is an hour plus. I've been driving to work the last 2 days, but I did change the spark plugs. It does feel like it's better, but I got a few more parts on the way. So, you know, that is how I have spent my first week being 37. I turned it on February 24th is my birthday every year. And yeah, so it's been just over a week now that I've been 37. And I felt absolutely nothing turning 37. I don't want to out my sister, who I just talked about, but she is turning 40, and I think she's going through a bit of a midlife crisis. And when I turned 35, I think I had a bit of a midlife crisis myself. But I'm not sure if that was because I was turning 35 and it felt like I was getting old, or if that was because I was getting fired at the exact same time. And maybe that was more why I was having a midlife crisis, because I was 35, losing my job, broke, with no future. So maybe that was why I was going through all the feels of turning 35. But turning 37, I don't care. I've said I've been 37 for like the 2 months leading up to it. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, how old am I? It's like, I'm not going to lie and say I'm 36 when I'm a month away from 37. It's like, yeah, I'm 37 years old, you know? I don't care. But it is a bummer that my van is not working. Anyways, I had a moment last week where I was thinking about my birthday and being 37. And it's like, in that moment, I just had like this sense of freedom where it was like, I'm old, doesn't matter. I'm broke, doesn't matter. It just is what it is. I don't care. I am totally fine with it right now. And yeah, that's turning 37. I realize that I just don't care. And I don't care about my birthday. If you feel like saying happy birthday to me, feel free. I appreciate all the comments I get, but I genuinely do not care about my birthday. But I am 37, and yeah, so happy birthday to me. What else do I want to talk about? Happy birthday, 37. Van's broken. I do think the wrestling show would have been probably fun. So I haven't been to one of these independent wrestling shows for quite a while. But my sister goes to one. I feel like she goes to one every week, which is probably not entirely true. But sometimes she goes to like 2 or 3 in a weekend, which I can't believe there's that many independent wrestling shows. But the last one I remember going to, it had to be 5 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. Those might have been the last 2 I've been to. But it was like, I'm not a big wrestling fan, but I used to be a big wrestling fan. And I'm a fan of the Pat McAfee Show, which is a podcast. about sports. He used to be a punter in the NFL, but he's also a commentator on the WWE. So he talks about wrestling. So I guess through osmosis, word of the day, osmosis. I guess through osmosis, I know a decent amount about wrestling, and I know what a heel is, and I know what a face is, and I'm hip to the lingo, and it is fun. Like there's a level of I don't even know. There's like a level of whimsy in like professional wrestling, and this is like low level amateur professional wrestling, which is an oxymoron, I believe, but you can't really call it. It's like this is pro YouTubing. It's not. It's amateur professional YouTubing. I make a very small amount of money. Please like and subscribe. I would like to make a little bit more. And if you don't like the production quality of this podcast, please donate on my Patreon, SARGEinc Patreon, and I will upgrade my my studio. But anyways, there's like a level of whimsy about wrestling that's just fun and goofy, and seeing those people like risk their lives, their body, their health, for like $50 a show is like pretty wild. And then like you can be pretty obnoxious in the crowd. And I remember, well, you're gonna know me well. I remember chanting, actually probably with Dustin there. Maybe we'll talk about this when he comes. We were just chanting, "We want blood. We want blood. We want blood," which is kind of a wild thing to chant in any situation, but at an independent wrestling show, strangely normal. And well, yeah. Anyways, I think it would actually be pretty fun, and yeah, I think wrestling is gaining in popularity again, and maybe it's my bias because my sister is like like wrestling is it's like her favorite thing. It's pretty wild, and then because I listen to Pat McAfee show, who's pretty into that world, it feels like wrestling's bigger. But I feel like pro wrestling is having a bit of a renaissance. But anyways, we'll see. I have no idea. But one of these days, I'm gonna take this show on the road, and we'll probably end up at an independent wrestling show. And maybe, just maybe, I'll get some wrestlers on this podcast. Todd Quality, I'm looking at you. Anyways, so what this podcast is mostly about, I want to talk about the Rockwall Trail and Banff, which, like I said earlier, I made 2 videos of them. I think the Rockwall episode's like almost 40 minutes. It's a 4-day hike. To me, it's a 5-day hike, but I did it in 4 days, which we'll talk more about. And then I went to Banff. But I just want to add some more context into this because I think it would just be kind of interesting. And I don't plan on doing a full breakdown of all the videos I make, but I think these ones are kind of interesting. So I wanted to talk about it. But first of all, if you don't know, the Rockwall Trail is, I think it's 54 kilometers, and it's in Kootenay National Park in BC. So like leading up to this, I had done my whole trip I went all the way to Saskatchewan. So I did all my trip, and then I came back to go to the Rockwall Trail. And so I did this hike way back in the day when I was probably 21 or 22 or something like that. It was a long time ago. I'm not going to look it up, but there was a fire in like 2005. And I think we did like the year after or the year after that. So whatever year that fire was, we did it like right after. So that's how long ago it was. It's always bad when you're old enough to like measure your time frame with geological factors like forest fires. Anyways, so this is in the Rockwall Trail. So I came all the way back to BC. It'll be my 3rd time I came back to BC. And then I spent the day leading up to it. I made this big old sign that said paint pots, and I was planning on hitchhiking from the trailhead up to the other one. But instead, I ended up catching a ride. It was no problem. Super easy to catch a ride with the guy. And then we get a ride up to the paint pots parking lot. And then I start hiking. And I don't start hiking. The first thing I do, I meet some random guy in the parking lot who, well, actually, I'll just say it now. This guy, I now know him as No Bear Spray Brad. His name was Brad, but he does not believe in bear spray. But he was the first trail friend I met on this hike. And I actually met a ton of people on this hike. It was pretty wild. It was probably the most social backpacking trip I've ever had. At least considering for the fact that I was solo. So I've had other times where it's like we went in a group of like 6 or 7. Well, frankly, on the Rockwall. When we were in a large group, so it was social in that way. But I just met so many strangers this time. But the first guy was Brad. So I just made conversation in the parking lot because, like, well, it's pretty obvious that we were going to be hiking the same trail. So it was good to get to know people. But he was an old, I don't want to say older guy. He was an older guy. Maybe like 50? Maybe a little younger. 45 to 50. And totally nice guy. And we ended up being like pretty decent friends. And like the one day, he didn't do the whole trail, but the one day we hiked all the way back down to camp and he was telling stories and stuff like that. But he had hiked the Chilkoot Trail up in Alaska. And he was telling me he just doesn't believe in bear spray. And he has no worries at all about bears. And I just think that's so crazy to me. Like, my number one fear on doing the Rockwall Trail solo, this guy's also solo. My number one fear out there is that I'm going to come across a bear while I'm solo and it's going to be an issue. And having bear spray is like your only line of defense. You have nothing other than bear spray, and this guy just refuses to carry it. And it's like, it's not heavy at all. Just carry some freaking bear spray. And it was just the craziest thing to me. Like, literally everybody else on the trail has bear spray. And my bear spray, like, I have it on my chest strap on my backpack. And it's like up riding on my, like, poking me in the chin, essentially. And it's like, you just have to have it right there. Like, I don't leave camp. Like, if I move from the cooking area to my tent area, I have bear spray in my pocket at all times. Anyways, this guy straight doesn't believe it. His whole reasoning was that he could just talk to the bear and it will be fine. That was it. And I could not believe it. But that was the first guy that I met on the trail. Nice guy. No bear spray, Brad. Anyways, I just carry bear spray. Just do it. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, man. I feel like that was a very interesting story. Anyways, it was the first day. So we hike. I'm going to pull up my map here. I'm not showing you these maps because I'm not editing this. But the first day, the total distance was 16.5 kilometers. Which, if you go and hike the Rockwall Trail, you will actually hike less than that. I think it's like 14.5 kilometers, maybe 15 kilometers. But I straight up got lost. The first day, I don't even think I was an hour in, and I was already lost. Which is crazy and just so dumb. Like, you're going on a 5-day, 54-kilometer backpacking trip by yourself, and you're less than an hour into it, and you're straight lost. Like, you are an idiot, dude. I did no research. I knew of the trail. It's not rocket science. I know the trail, and I had the general map of the trail saved in my phone as like a screenshot, and that was the entirety of the research I did. So when you're walking up the trail, there's something. Okay, so you start at the paint pots parking lot, and then you hike up to the paint pots, which are like, they're ochre beds. So if you don't know what an ochre is, it's like, I think it's iron oxide. It comes out in spring water, very orangey, kind of brown, looks like baby diarrhea, whatever. But back in the day, the First Nations people, or any people, but specifically the First Nations people, would use it as like paint or dye, and they'd mix it with like dirt or like animal fat, and they would use it as like face paint to dye their teepees, dye their clothes. Myself, I dyed my pants with it because I got on my my stupid detour while I was lost in the wood. I got my shoes covered in ochre mud. So then I rubbed that all on like the inner part of my calves. So my pants were dyed orangey brown. But anyways, so the ochre beds. Basically the paint pot is a big circle spring where it's like that's where the water comes up out of the ground. And then all the iron oxide collects and it dyes all the mud around it. So the paint pot is like a sacred, maybe sacred's not even the right word, but it's like a historic area where this iron oxide came out. It's paint pots. So you hike to paint pots. And then at this point on the trail, I guess you have to turn left. It's not very well marked in my opinion. But I just went to the paint pots. And I just followed what I thought was the trail. So I just kept motoring straight through. And next thing I know, I'm bushwhacking. And it's like, I think I'm following the trail. But it's like getting rough. And I'm like going up and over logs, under trees. And I've hiked on trails where you have to go up and under trees. So it's not that weird. But in my head, like I had done this hike before. And it's like, I don't remember doing this bushwhacking. And it's a national park. Like this is in Kootenay National Park. I don't think this is the trail. Like this doesn't make sense. Like they're usually very well maintained trails. That is a positive about doing hikes in national parks. Like they maintain them well because they want people to do stuff like this. And not everyone's a hardcore. Although I did meet a lot of hardcores on this trip. But anyways, it starts like seem weird. But it's like, whatever. Deny it. It's fine. Keep going. So I keep going. I'm like hiking through the mud, and there's footsteps down there. So it's like I'm following somebody. And I just keep going. And then at some point, it's like, no, there's no way. So I stop, and I do pull up my GPS. And I've gone at least half a kilometer, maybe a kilometer off track. And then so I just turn around, hike back up. At this point, I'm just absolutely pouring out sweat. And I've hiked at least a kilometer, maybe a kilometer and a half, in the total wrong direction. And then you get back up to the paint pots. And then you see that there was a left turn that I was supposed to take. And there was a well-marked sign that I just didn't look for. Or I didn't see it, but I didn't even look for it. I just head down, hiked where I thought I was going. And it's like, if I had done any research into this hike, like actual reading of a map, or if I went on to there's a Facebook group, which actually unrelated. I joined a Rockwall hiking Facebook group, and I think I got conned into joining a mailing list, and it bothers me, but not enough to delete myself from the group. But I keep getting these emails, actual emails from, I believe, the creator of the group, and I feel like I got conned to joining this group, but you have to sign up for the Facebook group by entering your email. And now I just get all these chain emails, and I'm not a fan of it, so I'm kind of annoyed. But if I was on there, a whole bunch of people make the same detour, and then everybody says, hey, turn left at the paint pots. But again, I just didn't do any research, and it's like I got lost. In the first hour of this trip, I got straight lost in the woods. Anyways, I felt like an absolute idiot, but I have, I got lost in the woods way back in the day. Properly lost in the woods. I had to get search and rescued from the North Coast Trail. I didn't have to get search and rescued. I got search and rescued. But I don't want to go into the whole story here. That'll be a story that I tell another day on another podcast. But it is embarrassing to get lost in the woods. And this one's just so avoidable. So just do a little bit of research, and it will save yourself a lot of headaches. But anyways, for the rest of that day, once I got back on trail, you're essentially just hiking, I guess I'd call it gradual, what am I doing here? It's just gradual climbs. I gained 560 meters of elevation. and it took me 4 hours. But you're just kind of walking through the forest. It is nothing fancy, nothing too great. Very, it kind of just gets you to where you want to go, which is Helmet Falls. So you hike Paint Pots to Helmet Falls. And Helmet Falls, I think when I looked it up to make the video, it said it was the 11th highest waterfall in the Rockies, which is a really weird stat and does not sound inspiring at all. The 11th highest. But it's pretty badass, to be honest with you. Definitely worth getting up there. But the first time I had hiked it, we had a rest day at Helmet Falls, which I think I would recommend doing, because when I was there this time, I didn't really have the opportunity to go up to the falls. And I believe you can hike up to the falls. I know you can, because actually to the left of me here in my studio, I have a picture of my former friend, standing up by the falls. So you can get like right up to the falls and be pretty awesome. But this trip, you just, you can see it from like the cooking area, but that was it. I didn't get like up close and personal to it, which is kind of a downer. So I wouldn't have mind having the extra day. But then if you have an extra day, you're like, rest days are kind of for the weak. Like, what are you doing? If you just do nothing all day, it's like that's not enough action. It's like not enough activity to keep you busy. And especially traveling solo, it's like, if you're not hiking, like, what are you doing? And going up to visit the waterfall, it's like takes half a day. But yeah, I guess you could hike in. You could go up there in the morning and then hike out or whatever. But anyways, I don't really know where I'm going with this. So yeah, actually, and so that Helmet Falls in the cooking area, you can see the falls. And then that day we were just all chilling by the cooking area. No bear spray, but Brad. And then we just met a whole bunch of people. And it was like, that first day, it was like the most social day I'd ever had on like one of these backpacking trips. It was just like kind of pretty wild. Like there's people from Germany that were interested in like learning about Canada, talking to No Bear Spray Brad. And then, okay, I guess I'll talk about this. Man, how do I say this nicely? So there was a couple there. There's two women. One of them was clearly transgendered. They used to be a man, and now they were a woman, which is totally fine. I have no issues. This is not picking on them for that. Frankly, anybody is open to be on the trails, and I will be nice to anyone on the trails as long as they're nice to me, which actually we'll get into that later. God, man, there was somebody not nice to me on this trip, and I'm still annoyed about it, but we'll talk about that later. So this lady, I don't even want to name her because I feel bad, but her name was Karen, which, hey, if you are choosing your name in this day and age, Karen is it's the wrong choice. If your name is Karen, that sucks, but that's fine. But if you can pick any name, don't go with Karen, especially in this situation when you have transitioned. And like, again, I don't want to pick on anybody. Like, they might be listening, who knows? But like, you could tell. You could tell. That's all I'll say. And when you meet somebody like that you could tell, and they chose the name Karen, I was so concerned that I was going to say something stupid and it was going to cause a situation. Again, I'm not trying to be mean, but I know that I'm an idiot. And the more things you say, like, chances are some of them are going to be dumb. And I was like genuinely concerned that I was going to say something stupid and this person was going to go full on Karen on me. And like I said, I was concerned. But this lady ended up being like so nice to me. And honestly, like totally cool. Earlier in this trip, I had been in Saskatchewan, and I think they were from Saskatchewan, or at least had spent a lot of time in Saskatchewan. And so we were just talking about Saskatchewan, and they were both into photography. And I'm not really into photography. I do take a pretty good cell phone picture, in my honest opinion. I'm an excellent cell phone photo taker. But I don't have a real camera, but I have my video. So it's like kind of related, sort of, videos and photography. So we were chatting about that and talking about in Grasslands National Park, because they had spent a bunch of time there, and I had just been there, and I still think Saskatchewan, or Grasslands National Park in Saskatchewan, was awesome, and I want to tell everybody about it. It was awesome. So I was like fresh off that high, and then they were talking about it, and they were talking about some type of bird. Maybe it was burrowing owls. I don't know. Anyways, they're like, "Did you see the burrowing owls?" And talking about all these other. I think they were serious birders. We're serious photographers, but I think they were into birds. And it's like they were serious hikers and serious adventurers, and really into that stuff. And they were actually, like I said, so nice, and they made great hiking companions. And I actually do feel bad because, like, I don't judge. That's not true. I do judge. But I was totally wrong about this person. And I'm not like I thought they were going to be horrendous or anything like that. But I just felt like it was the name thing. It threw me off. I was just concerned that it was going to go a little bit south. And it ended up, it couldn't have been further from the truth. And they were absolutely the best people that I met on this hike. It's totally worth it. And, well, on fear of being too controversial, I think that was the first time I've actually talked and spent time around a transgendered person in real life. I don't see them around. I don't know any. And that was the first time I'd actually been around and spent time with them. And yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but it was interesting that was the first one I've ever met. In this day and age, with all the stuff you read on the internet and see online, and that was the first one I've actually spent time around. It's the only time I've had the opportunity, which I think is interesting. But anyways, don't go with Karen as your name. If you can pick your name, don't go with Karen, because it's going to have you convinced you're going to say something stupid. And, go with anything. Go with Jennifer. Go with Pam. Go with... Well, yeah, just go with Jennifer or Pam. Don't go anything really weird. Don't go with any sort of stripper names. But Karen is just not... It's just not the way to go. Yeah, man. I hope I didn't say anything stupid there either. Yeah, very nice. I don't really know what to say. But day 2, so the Rockwall on day 2, that day you hike. What is my dog doing over there? I have my dog in my house, and to record the podcast, I have to close the door, both the front door. I live in a suite. The front door, so he can't get into the house where he likes to operate in the den, so he can bark out the window. And then he can't go out the back door where he likes to go out and roam his grass in his backyard. So even if he would normally not go outside at this time, the fact that he can't, I think it bothers him. So now he's going around and he is just pacing around the house and eating and drinking food and being annoying. So anyways, if you hear something in the background, it's just my dog being, I think my dog has sundowners. I think when you get Alzheimer's disease, when you're old and you start to lose your mind, you sundown. It's what they said about Joe Biden. He just jumped on the couch. He also can barely jump on the couch. He falls down I guess he probably makes it about 8 out of every 10 times. And then he falls down kind of spectacularly sometimes. But I think when you're old, you have Alzheimer's. You have sundowners. So during the day, you're good. But then the evenings, I think you start to get stir crazy. And then you're like up, down, restless, like moving around. I think people get like angry and hostile and stuff like that. My dog does not get hostile. Do you, bud? He does not get hostile, but he gets restless. And I think in the most relatable thing he does is he gets restless. And then I think to like calm his own mind, he goes and eats food. And I think that is very relatable. I do not have sundowners nor Alzheimer's, nor am I as old as he is. Technically, I'm older, but not really. But I think it is. I think he eats to calm himself down because he gets restless of the mind in the evening. Anyways, it is very sad seeing your dog get old, for the record. Anyways, with that being said, so Rockwall day 2, that was the first good day. So like that hike, 716 meters of elevation gain and 13.5 kilometers. When you hike out of the first day, you go like straight uphill. I don't know how many elevations up right away. I'll go with 300 right off the bat. But you're climbing up straight up, and then you're to the right. You're looking at Helmet Falls, and Helmet Falls is, you should look pictures up online if you are just watching this. I should probably put them in B-roll, but that's not how I roll. This would seriously just be an audio podcast, but I thought I would do some video. I'm not doing B-roll though. Anyways, it is like a huge, it's called a rock wall. You can sort of imagine it's a big rock wall, and then there's a waterfall coming down. So when you're hiking up, man, is it called the Rockwall Path at that point? I'm not sure. Anyways, you hike up, but to your right, you have the wicked view of the wall and Helmet Falls coming down, but you're going straight up, and it's like the first real hike of the trip. And I'm fat and out of shape, and it was tough. And you're hiking up, and my GPS on that day, it was tracking me, but not really. So like the dot on my GPS didn't move, or it moved for like a portion of the day, and then it stopped. But like my tracking numbers kept going. So it's like, oh, you've hiked 3 kilometers or 2 kilometers or whatever. I'm like, oh, okay, I must be getting close. But then you look at the dot on the map, because I do have Strava, which I use Strava to map my stuff when I'm hiking. And it did have the trail marked down there. So actually, I did get lost day 1, even though I had Strava running, which is terrible. I didn't even look at it ahead of time. But anyway, so I'm hiking up this thing, and the dot is not moving. The dot is just frozen. So I'm like gassing out, and I'm working hard. I'm pouring sweat. I feel like I'm going so far. And my GPS dot, you can count the switchbacks. It's like I've only gone up like 3 of them. And it's like, man, there's so much further to go. And it's like, man, there's no way I'm moving this slow. So you like put down the pace a little bit harder. And like I said, I'm just pouring out sweat. And finally, I get to the top, and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta take a break. And then I open up my map, and it's like, oh, I still haven't moved. I'm still in the middle of these switchbacks. And finally, when I get to the top of this first climb, it's like, you realize that the dot hadn't moved. So once I opened up my app, it like reset itself, and it started going. And anyways, you hike that sweet. It was mediocre, but a nice view. You hike up there, and then you get to the top. And then you looking straight down into the valley. And at the bottom of that, there's like 2 little lakes. So I stopped, and I like took my break, took my shirt off so I could dry off because I had poured out so much sweat. And then you're like sitting there having a snack, and then you're like, oh, I got to walk down to those lakes to fill up my water bottles. So that's what I do. But actually, while I'm there, I realize at this point in time, I do have a blister on my toe. It's not really a blister. It's like I guess it's kind of like a crack in like the folds of your toe, sort of. It's hard to call. It's not, like I said, not a real blister, but I have an issue developing with my toe. But anyways, so from there you bomb like straight downhill. On the rock wall, you're either going uphill or you're going downhill. Uphill or downhill. So you hike straight up out of camp, have a break, and then you hike straight down to these lakes. And on my way down, I ran into the only other fat guy I saw on this trip. And I'm not trying to be rude to this guy, But he was the only guy that was about my size. I weighed 280 pounds going into this hike, maybe more. I don't even know. And then this guy, he's going up the hill. I'm going down the hill. And then we have a quick little chat. And I was like, dang, like it's good to see another big guy out here, you know? And he's like, oh yeah, same too. And then saying something about going down. I was like, oh, you're my spirit animal. Anyways, long story. This guy had been hiking for 14 days. And I think that's fucking wild. And I, in my head, think I'm doing something crazy. I'm doing this 5-day hike, almost super hardcore. And this guy's doing 5 times as much, or 3 times as much as me. And it's like, I could do so much more if I want to, you know? And like I said, he was another big guy. And he's a big guy out there absolutely moving. So, kind of inspirational. Anyways, with that being said, I kept going. They hiked down, and then you get to these like glacier-fed lakes. Real nice. I fill up my water, take another break, and that's when No Bear Spray Brad passed me. And then from there, we hiked down to the lakes. From there, you go up, and this is now Rockwall Pass, and you hike up and over like a boulder field, and you go into like the forest. And then on your right-hand side, there's a huge rock wall. It's the big granite rock wall that you walk alongside for like, I don't know, 10K, 8K, 5K, who knows, all day. And you hike along it. And this is like, it's a very nice hike. And it's like day one kind of sucks. There's no good views. But day 2, you're like, oh, okay, now I finally get why I'm here. And it makes it all worth it. And yeah, so I hike along up there. It's like it's awesome, just awesome. And yeah, it's one of those days you're like, oh, this is exactly what I came here for. Anyways, we hike all that day. I don't know. This hiking part is not that boring. I just want to tell stories. And then we hiked down with No Bears for Brad to camp. And then yeah, so then we hiked down into camp. And then what do I want to say here? Okay, so in camp, you meet the same people every day. So we meet some of the same people every day. So at camp 2, we come down. I'm hanging out with Brad again. Then I've met this other girl named Nina, and this Icelandic guy named Atli. Atli? I hope he doesn't listen. I forgot his name. I think it's Atli. Anyways, he was from Iceland, and they were walking as like a pair, which they were supposed to be in a group, but then the group like canceled or whatever, and they just came and hiked as a pair, not a couple, but a pair. So they came down. So then we were all camping. We sort of all met the day before, and we're all chatting or whatever. And then and then same with Karen and her partner came down. So we're all hanging out, having a good time or whatever. And then this new girl came, and maybe they met her on the first day. I didn't meet this girl. I probably shouldn't name her just in case, because she was mean to me. Damn it! But I don't really want to out her. But anyways, so she comes down, and she's complaining that she wasn't feeling good. So it's like, oh, like, is there anything we can do or whatever? And then it's like, she's kind of explaining that she can't, her stomach hurts. And then she's like, oh, I don't know if it's because I can't poop out in the woods, or if I have period cramps or all this stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, I do have a first aid kit. Do you need anything? Let me know, blah, 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 blah. So this is a new girl, comes to camp. Totally fine, but like, man, I don't even know how to describe. But just kind of loud, and then just volunteers a lot of information in a weird way, and like a little obnoxious, I guess I'd say, but not in like a, man, I don't even know how to describe it. Not like obnoxious, but not in like a being mean to you way, just like kind of obnoxious. I don't really know how to describe it. Anyways, so this girl, whatever, she meets us at camp. Not a big deal. I was like, we're all trying to be nice to her. Sorry, I'm thinking about these things in my head as I'm talking. I don't really know where I'm going. So we meet her anyways. I'm just going to skip through that. On day 3, we wake up. Just remember that this person is now in the picture. On day 3, we head out, and this is going to be the shortest day of the trip. So I just went out first thing in the morning. I didn't talk to anyone. We're just gone. So, yeah, you hike. Whatever. None of the hiking matters. This is the shortest day. We get to camp. You go up a big hill, and then right as you get to the top of the hill, you go down a huge hill. And it's, honestly, scenery, awesome. Beautiful scenery this day. Like, you're up in the Alpine, and then you're coming down, and it's awesome. Like, really just awesome. I have nothing bad to say about it. But then when you come down, you do go through some bushes, which, again, no bears hurt Brad. Would have no qualms about. But me, I was like, yeah, I'm going to run into a bear here. It's like super brushy, dense, and you're just like hiking through. Like, it just felt like I'm going to come across a bear. Anyways, you get to camp. I'm there early, so I start having breakfast or whatever. All right, I think I pack an extra breakfast, like a freeze-dried breakfast, and I have it for lunch that day. I got my feet in the creek. Anyways, this campsite has a fire pit. So this is late September. It's literally like the very last day of summer or whatever. It's like the 19th or 20th of September at this point in time. But it's like there's a fire pit, and I'm like, I didn't know there was going to be a fire pit. I don't know if we're allowed to have fires. Is there a fire ban on? I'm not really sure. Like, is this fire pit here? Like an actual fire pit, like a metal fire pit put there, not a ring of rocks. So, like I said, I don't really know. So I'm asking everyone. And then we get the same people. We got Nina, we got Atlee. And they're like, well, if there's a fire pit, we should be able to have a fire. There's no reason why we shouldn't. And then it's like, okay, well, if you guys are down to have fire, I'm talking to everybody on camp. So I literally talked to everybody on camp because I am a little bit concerned about this fire, if we're allowed to. Because you're in a national park. You don't want to mess around and get into trouble. That's, not a good idea. And just not worth the time. If you're going to get into trouble, don't even bother. But, so I'm asking everyone what their thoughts are about the fire. Anyways, like I literally asked everybody in camp. Everybody in camp. I had talked to at least 12 people. There's more people that came. People came up just for that one campsite. I talked to 12 people about this. Everybody wants to have a fire. Some people volunteer matches. They volunteer this, that. And we now have it on a map. The lady was like, oh yeah, we can straight up have a fire. There's no fire ban on. She was from the area. There's no fire ban at all. Like, there's no reason we can't have a fire here. Except for that one girl that we had met the previous day before that I said was a little bit obnoxious. She did not want us to have a fire. She didn't think we were allowed to have a fire. Even when presented with all the information by everybody saying that we could have a fire. She didn't want to have a fire. She thought it was going to be a problem. It's like, I don't understand why now we have all the information we could possibly need. So it's like, we are going to have a fire. Like, I don't understand what your problem is at this point. And then it's like, okay, but like, keep it small. It's like, hey, yeah, I'm totally fine. We'll keep it small. But everyone here wants to have a fire except for you. And then I made a joke that we're not even confident we're going to be able to start a fire. We might have to start it with sardine oil and toilet paper. And she flipped the fuck out. She was now concerned that we're going to invite all the bears to our campsite and there's going to be a problem. And in my head, I was straight up joking about the sardine oil to start a fire. We literally had matches and had like no paper. So I'm like mostly joking. And then she's like absolutely and just went off at me. So I don't like to say it, but she was so cunty. So cunty. Like, it was unbelievable. She was mansplaining me about how dangerous it is that we were even considering using food in the fire. And I was like, you know what? You're 100% right. We are not using sardine oil. I am sorry that we even joked about it. We will not do that at all. You're 100% right. Right? And I was just, whatever you say, I'm totally fine with. You're right. Hey, I agree with that. So it's like, yeah, okay, 100%. I agree with you. So then we move on. And then later, she's like, just arguing about something. I don't even remember what else about the fire was her problem. And then she's complaining about it. Eventually, I don't even start the fire. We get Nina. Nina starts the fire. Nina's been a scout for 15 years. So she's like, I'm a scout for 15 years. I'm starting the fire. It's like, yeah, okay, more power to you. So she starts the fire. And then I have a log. So the whole thing, I was concerned about this fire. And after this lady tore a strip out of me about this fire and not being fire safe and all this stuff, it's like, I was going so far above and beyond to be fire safe. I swept all around the fire so there was nothing that could possibly catch. I was as fire safe as you could possibly be. Anyway, so we get this fire going, and then I put this log on the fire. This log is, I'll call it 3 feet long, and I put it right across the fire. So we burn it in the middle. Eventually it'll split. We can put both ends on the fire. That was my plan. This lady freaked out. Just flipped out on me for having this out of control fire and having this log on top of the fire. I'm going to burn everything down. Men are the problem. Men burn down Jasper. You're the reason why we can't come out here. And I swear to God, this fire, no exaggeration, I'm not saying this to protect myself. On a scale of 1 to 10 of sketchiness, I wouldn't even call this fire a 2. This fire is so small. I'm not even convinced this fire is even going to burn through this log because of how small the fire is. And again, I swept all around the fire. I made it as fire safe as humanly possible. There are 10 people around. It couldn't have been the only, there's, I guess we could have fire extinguishers all around. And we all have water bottles. We're cooking dinners. We are all around it with water. There's almost nothing we could possibly even do to make this any safer. And this lady is going off at me. And I am so calm, and I'm trying to talk her down, tell her she's being unreasonable, and it's like, hey, I'm guarding this fire. I will not leave this fire. If anything happens, I am responsible for this fire. I'm telling her all the things I've done to protect this fire, and she just kept going and going, and like I said, just she was blaming because. Before, 2 months before, this is when Jasper burned down, which I'm almost positive was caused by lightning, but in her eyes, it was because of men. And it was all men. Men are dumb. Men cause fires. Men are the problem. She was so incredibly man-hating. It was the wildest thing. I was a victim of toxic feminism in that moment. That's the only way I can describe it. Yeah, I was blown away. She was so out of pocket. I couldn't believe it. I still to this day I can't believe it. And I'm still mad about the situation. I swear to God, I could not have been nicer and more accommodating in this situation. And she was just relentlessly telling me how shitty it was, how shitty I was, how shitty men were. And it's other people at the campsite were men aren't the problem. What are you talking about? And we're all here. We all want this fire too. But no one wants to really get involved. So it's they're just saying a little bit to protect me. Or protect me is a weird word. But they're trying to support me because everybody wants this fire. Everybody wants this fire. And they're like trying to talk her down. And anyways, her tent was originally up by my tent. And after this fire, she just got, and like I said, I'm calm. The whole time I was calm. I didn't yell. I wasn't anything but calm, cool, collected. She tore a strip out of me, all that stuff. Eventually, she just like gets fucking frustrated and just storms off. And she went and she grabbed her tent. She took her tent down and moved away from my tent because she didn't even want to be around my tent, knowing that how bad of a person I was for having this fire. And it was all because I guess I had this log over the top of the fire, which she deemed as a wild fire hazard. Which, like, I guess maybe you can sort of wrap your head around that being such a fire hazard. But, dude, she blew this thing from a, like I said, the fire sketchiness meter, less than a 2. And she just went off and just, like, totally ruined the vibes of camp. And it was like, dude, it was unbelievable. Like I said, it still to this day bothers me that this lady, oh, dude, it bothers me. And she's also a YouTuber. She was talking to me about YouTube. And she's like, oh, I've been on YouTube for 15 years and I have 200 subscribers. And then I was like, dude, I'll give you a shout out in my video. Like, that'll be totally fine. Like, I got no problem doing that. And then it's like, and then she tore a strip out of me. It's like, no wonder why you have 200 subscribers. You are an absolute cunt. You have negative personality. You're awful. Like, why would anybody watch your videos? I don't even want to be around you at this campsite. You're so toxic. You ruined this campsite for everybody here. Oh, dude, it was bad. It still bothers me. And I would have liked to give her a shout out. But instead, I'm still going to be nice. I'm not going to I'm not going to try to talk shit about her channel because it doesn't need shit talked about it. Anyways, I'm still bothered by it. Anyways, with that being said, that fire lasted half an hour, and then it started to pour down rain, and then it rained so we got that fire going at about 7, and then 7:30 the rain came, and by 7:30 everyone in camp was in bed, and that night was over. So that was my final memory of night 3, was this lady ruining the vibes at camp. And then the rain came and ruined the rest of the vibes and totally sent everyone home. And that was it for the night. So in the morning we wake up. Everyone wakes up. I'm solo. But anyway, we all wake up and I wake up. It's like it's raining. I get out tent. It's like just stops raining. It's like, hey, make hay when the hay's good. I'm going. Break down camp. And I'm just going. I'm hiking to Flow Lake. And Flow Lake is the pinnacle of this hike. This is like the whole reason you go there is to go to Flow Lake. I got a last minute Flow Lake reservation. It's the hardest reservation to get. The day I crashed my drone, in the aftermath of me being sad about my drone, I looked on the reservations. It's like, oh my God, there's an availability at Flow Lake. So I booked it. So I'm going to Flow Lake. And it's like, I'm getting there and I don't want it to rain on me. So it's like, it's not raining. I'm just going to make a break for it. Not only am I concerned about it raining on me, this day you're hiking over Numa Pass. You're hiking over Numa Pass, which is the highest pass of the lake. I think it's like 2,300 meters of elevation total. And yeah, it's the highest point of the hike. So weather's all right, so I just make a break for it. And I start heading out there. Little do I know, this lady, who shall remain nameless, who tore a strip out of me for having the fire, was going around camp screaming at everybody how unsafe it was to go over Numa Pass. They're calling for snow. It's dangerous. Everybody has to turn back. And all this stuff. She's just going off at camp. I was not there. This is all secondhand reports from a couple I met in Utah. And she's just going off telling everyone how, like, they can't do it. It's dangerous. All this stuff. And I assume it was not in a friendly, awesome way. She was probably really cunty about it. And anyways, quite a few people did turn around because also like whether you can go over a mountain pass in the snow and whether you should go over a mountain pass in the snow are different things. So some people turned around. My friend Nina, she turned around. Some of the people that were just up for like day hikes or whatever, they just turned around. Also, you wake up, your tent's all wet, your stuff's wet. You're like, fuck it, I'm going home. So people went home. I get it. But this lady scared everyone into go. Not everyone. Scared a bunch of people into leaving. But I'm already gone. I left, and also she probably would not have warned me because she hated me. Oh my god. Anyways, she warned everyone. I knew I'm gone, so I'm hiking up this hill. About halfway up the hill, it's the rain is back, and the rain starts to turn to snow. And it's about halfway up the hill, and it's like, oh man, this is gonna be like, it's gonna be snowing properly. For me to be up at the mountain, it's gonna be snowing properly. And then you keep going. It's like, this is a steep, hard hike. I think you gain, pull up my little map here. I think you gain like 800 meters of elevation. 811 meters of elevation I gained on day 4, which I think is all on that hike coming straight up out of camp. It's a steep, hard hike all the way to the top of Numa Pass. And, yeah, you just keep going, and the conditions are getting worse. And I don't want to, I'm not in a whiteout, far from it, but it's getting snowy, and it's like, shit, this is like kind of sketchy. And I'm out here by myself, and I'm fucking beat. I'm exhausted. Like, this is a hard day of hiking. Like, I'm out here, I weigh 280 pounds. My backpack at this point probably weighs 40 pounds, maybe 45 pounds. I think it started at weighing 50 pounds, and then I ate some of my food. That's a hell of a weight to carry up and down these hills. So I'm doing the hardest mountain pass of the day. It's snowing. And by the time I get to the top, like, it is fairly sketchy. And it was like one of those things, it's like, this is summer. This is like the last day of summer. I was not expecting snowy conditions. So, I wasn't prepared mentally for it. But really, I wish I had like little spikes on my shoes, like the micro spikes. I have these little like slip-on rubber things with like grippers on. Because when you're up on the trail, it's like I'm sliding all over the place in the snow. It's not snowshoe worthy, but it was like I wouldn't have minded some more traction. When I'm up there, I'm gassed. And I'm sliding all over the place. It's like, this is properly sketchy. And luckily there was footsteps coming over the mountain pass. So the people somebody had left earlier than I did. I didn't even see them, so I have no idea who they even were. Somebody left early that day and laid tracks. And then when I was going, I was about 3/4 up the hill. And that's when that couple from Utah passed me. And that's when I heard about the lady warning everybody about the snow and telling everyone to turn around or they're going to die. So they passed me. And so I had 2 sets of footsteps to follow. And I am so glad that I had the footsteps to follow. Because when you're out there and you're tired and it's scary. You are by yourself in like iffy conditions and you're nervous. It's like if I slip, it's like I'm by myself on the top of a mountain in the snow. It's like, this is dangerous. Like this is real, This isn't, a hike is fun, but it's like you are risking yourself out there. And it's like in that moment you realize like what you're actually doing, and like it is dangerous. So I was really glad to have those footsteps. But anyways, you come down off the top, you bomb down. Once you get about a third of the way from the peak of Numa Pass, not the peak, but the summit of Numa Pass, you head back down. And then once you start getting about halfway down, the snow clears up, and it's kind of just like a slushy, snowy hike. Totally normal, like totally fine. They bomb into to Flow Lake, and Flow Lake is awesome. Like I said, it's the crown jewel of the hike. It's got this rock wall behind it, and then it's just like a big glacier lake. Awesome. I get there. I guess it's still snowing / raining. It's like half and half. Sometimes it's snowing, sometimes it's raining. So I go, there's like a little ranger's cabin. So I go and I'm hiding, hiding from the weather on the deck of this ranger's cabin. So when I first get there, the couple I met from Utah were still there, drying out their stuff, ready to have a snack ready. They were hiking out that day. So I'm there. They leave. I'm just sitting there by myself. Got all my stuff hanging to dry. These two girls hiked up, and then they were going to go over the pass. And then I was like, oh, showing them my video. And it's like, hey, it's sketchy but doable, all this stuff. So they come and go. And I'm like, oh, I'm camping here. And like, whatever. Have a chat. Anyways, I'm on this deck for like 2 hours. Just hiding because there's nothing else to do because it's rainy. I don't want to be out in the rain. So I'm sitting on this fucking 8x8 deck. That's probably 4x8 deck of this thing, just sitting there by myself / on occasion talking to people, and then some more people, Otley and oh man, what are the names? Fuck. There's two. I don't want to get tuned identity politics. There's two gay dudes. I follow one on Instagram. Remy. He's a birder. French guy. And then like his boyfriend or whatever. They come down. So there's now 3 people on there. And they're like, oh yeah, we're hiking through. Anyways, everybody I met was like just hiking through. And I was like, earlier I was committed to staying there. But sitting on that deck for like 3 hours, hiding from the weather after that hard day of hike and like mentally tired, it's like, man, I can't do this. I can't be here. I just gotta go too. So after all that hype of being at Flow Lake, all the excitement, the last minute reservation, sitting on that deck, I just realized that I was going home. So I packed up all my shit and I huffed it out of there. So once you leave Flow Lake, you're up, you go up a little bit, and then you just straight down. It's like 1,200 meters of elevation on the final day, which is supposed to be day 5, but I just doubled up on day 4. So my first section of day 4 was 10.5K with a big 800 meter climb. And then my second set was 11.5K with, it doesn't have the elevation down. Anyways, it took me 3 hours bombing straight downhill. And dude, I was cooked. I walked about an hour from Flow Lake with this mindset of like, I'm getting out of here, I'm done. And then about an hour in, it's like, dude, I'm fucked. This was a terrible idea. I should never have left that lake. Dude, I'm so spent. Mentally, I'm spent from like the stress of the day. Physically, I'm cooked. Like, I'm done. This is my day 4 of hiking. I just went up the big hill, and I'm sore. And then I'm still so far, but there's no turning back. Like, you just got to keep going. So I did. I kept going. And then, dude, that last hour, it took me 3 hours to get down from Flow. That last hour, I was on my absolute wit's end. Dude, I was so spent physically, but more so mentally. Dude, I literally was almost crying. Not like bawling my eyes out in tears or anything like that, but it was just like I was so fed up and wanting to be done that I was just like overwhelmed. And like the rain came, and it's like that was it. I like, couldn't handle it, And I was like, I wanted to go home so bad in that moment. And then it was honestly like the lowest mentally I've ever been on a hike that I wasn't lost was like coming down. And I just thought it was interesting. I had never been in that situation before, that I was so spent physically and mentally that, it was just dark. And it was like sad and depressing. And coming down that final stretch from Flow, back in the day, there's a forest fire. So that whole area burned. So it's like not the most appealing hike. So it's just depressing. Like I said, I'm on the low. I just got yelled at. The weather's shitty. It's snowing. It's raining. I'm not camping at Flow Lake. I was just so bummed out and exhausted. Oh, dude, it was so bad. Anyways, that kind of ends it, that hike. I hike all the way down, get to the parking lot. I'm like, in my head, I'm going to the Radium Hot Springs hot spring, I guess. But by the time I get to the parking lot, first of all, I'm so spent. The last thing I wanted to do is anything. And second of all, the hot springs closed. So it's not even an opportunity to go to the hot springs. So I'm just done. So anyways, I do that. The next day, there's the Radium Hot Springs car show. Go to the car show. Go to the hot springs. And then, did I have 1 day or 2 days? In Radium, I met this British girl in a parking lot who had actually day hiked to Flow Lake the day after I was there. And we were both talking about how exhausted we were. And we hung out. It was a good time. I fell in love with the British girl in the parking lot. So I think I was in Radium for 2 days. And then I was like, I got to get a move on. I got things to do. And I had recovered from my hike. Physically and mentally. Well, physically I was not really recovered. But I need to get moving to get my legs flowing. So after 2 days in Radium, for the record, the car show in Radium, awesome. I think I'm going back this year. And I kind of want to put my van in the car show. I think it'll be sweet. But the only problem with that is to get in and out of the car show, you have to wait in a huge lineup. And I'm not sure if it is worth it just to enter my van in a car show because I think it'll be funny. Anyways, after 2 days in Radium, I'm getting a move on. And this will all make sense when I talk about Banff and the whole thing. It's all related. So I leave. I hike up to the Stanley Glacier. It's a nice hike. It's in Kootenay National Park. It's a nice hike. I think it's 4K each way. I climb like 300, 400 meters. Pretty gradual. Get my legs going again. Trying to get my head in the, get in the travel mode again. All that stuff. Hike up, hike down. I head to Banff. When I get to Banff, I head to 2 Jack Lake campsite because that was where I decided I wanted to camp. It's full. So I head to Tunnel Mountain, which if you have not been to Banff, Tunnel Mountain kind of sucks. There's 2 Tunnel Mountains, Village 1 and Village 2. I don't remember which one it is, but one of them really sucks and the other one's fine. But neither of them had vacancies. They were both full. But one is just a straight up parking lot for RVs. The other one's a little more forested and a little more doable. But either way, they're both fine. So now, after I left Radium, I do this hike, go to Banff. It's full. Now I have to leave. There's no good places to, not that I know of, there's no good places to just camp on the side of the road in Banff. So I go on iOverlander, which if you don't know iOverlander, it's a website where you can, I guess it's a van life RVing website where you can like look on a map and it'll show you where people like point out places where you can camp on the side of the road. So I find this place. Well, first of all, I found this one place that said you can camp, but I got there. It looked like it was for day use only, which, well, it'll come back into this parking lot into the story. Wait, that didn't make sense. We'll come back to the parking lot into the story. I still don't think that made sense. Anyways, this parking lot was day use only. So I go there. I'm like, it looks like day use only. It looks like it might even be patrolled. Who really knows? I'm not camping here. So I look on iOverlander again, and I head to the spot. Alongside a river, I think it's called in Seabee. Seabee? Anyways, doesn't really matter. Someplace in Alberta. I could have gone all the way to Calgary where I was offered a driveway spot, or a house, or a driveway to camp, but I decided I didn't want to go too far. So it's like I found the spot in CD. It looked pretty good on iOverlander. I get there, you're right by the river. Okay, awesome. But it's right by the train tracks. And if you watched my video, you'll know it is right by the train tracks. In my head, I was like, it'll be fine. When I'm in my van, the trains aren't going to be that loud anyways. But then if you actually watch my video, there was no way I should have thought that. The train was right there, next to my van. There was no way I was going to be able to tune it out. So not only was I not going to be able to tune out, those trains went all fucking night. All night. Train after train after train after train after train after train. And I got the worst sleep. Not only did the trains come all night, I don't know what time the wind started, but there was Chinook winds that came that night. And so I wake up in the morning and you could hear the wind. So if the train's not going, you could hear the wind blowing through the vent. It's blowing rocking the van. It's like, this is crazy. I slept terrible. I wake up. I'm like, oh my God, like whatever. I was in a bad mood, but I will get into a worse mood. So believe me there. I wake up. I'm like, okay, I got to get moving. Let's go back to that parking lot. And so actually in my van, I'm texting a guy named James, who I know on Instagram. And I'm thinking about doing a hike. At this point, I'm like going to go into Kananaskis country. And I was thinking about doing some canoeing. So then I'm literally texting him. We're talking about doing the Healy Pass. I'm not really sure, blah, blah, blah. I get in my van to drive back to this parking lot. And it was white knuckle driving. I was scared that canoe was coming flying off that fucking roof of that van. Dude, it was frightening. I'm literally white knuckle. I got a death grip on that steering wheel. It is blowing side to side. When those winds gust, they fucking gust. I was blowing side to side. The van, the roof, the canoe on the roof was going side to side. And I was like, holy crap, this is sketchy. So I pull into that parking lot. Well, so I go to the parking lot. I do my business. There's a bathroom there. I go to the bathroom. I make breakfast. And I flat out spiraled at this point in time. I just couldn't drive. I was done. Mentally, I was done. I was not driving anymore. In that wind, it was impossible for me to drive. So I sat in that parking lot for like 5 or 6 hours. Just watching maybe it wasn't that long. It had to be 5 hours. I just sat in that parking lot for 5 hours by myself. And I spiraled is the best way to describe it. I was sitting there the wind was blowing. The wind was blowing I guess like a dust devil is what you'd call it. Like a mini tornado where it whips up the dust. It's gravel parking lot. It whips up the dust. It's blowing it around like little mini tornadoes. The trees are going. It's like I have a hat on, blowing the hat off my head. And I just sat there. And I spiraled. It was bad. And that James guy that I was messaging earlier that day about going on a hike, from there, I just straight ignored him. I'm like, dude, I'm done. I'm done. In that parking lot, I was done. My trip was over. That was the moment that everything, it just ended for me. The wind, the lack of sleep that night, and all that fatigue that had built up in me from doubling up that one day on the Rockwall Trail, everything hit me in that parking lot. And then mentally, I spiraled. I don't really know how to describe it other than that. But it's like, if I had camped that extra night in Flow, and I didn't push my limits that day, I might have been able to, cope better. But instead, I just goddamn spiraled out in that parking lot. And, dude, it was bad. It was bad. I was in such a foul mood. It was just sad. Genuinely sad. So anyways, at some point, I realized that I have to move. So I go back to Banff. This time I booked a campsite in Banff. Head back to Banff. Go shower up or whatever. Camp for the night. Have a flyer. And still, driving back to Banff was it was white knuckle. The closer I got to Banff, the better the driving was, because you get up into the mountains, and then the wind gets blocked a little bit. And once the wind got blocked a little bit, it was way better. But then I went and I camped that night in Banff by myself, sitting by the fire. And it's like, I think I posted on Instagram about being butthurt. And just like, when you're out on these trips, everything looks so awesome on Instagram. I'm doing all this badass shit. I'm camping. Everyone's at work. Like, oh, my life sucks. But it's like, in that day, it was like, hey, just so you guys know, it is not all awesome out here. Some days you sleep next to the train tracks. And you get fucking in a bad mood. And you are just done with it all. Like, I don't want to be too extreme. I wasn't like ready to off myself or anything. But it's like, dude, I was full on like having a pity party for myself. I just felt so bad. And yeah, that night in Banff was like the day I decided that my trip was over. And that's not going to be the end of my trip. So I'll actually have a couple more videos coming out of my trip. But that day it was just like, yeah, I had a bad day. And I couldn't handle it. But it all, I don't know, man. It was just funny. It was a pathetic few days. Looking back, it's like I hiked too hard. Then I had a bad sleep. And then it got windy. And I couldn't handle it. It's like pretty pathetic. But at that point I had been alone for like damn near 60 days. And it's like I missed my dog. I missed my friends. And that all that fatigue and the shit not going your way. Yeah, it put me in a really bad mood. So anyways, I don't really know where I'm going with this. That was the end of it. No, that wasn't the end of it. So Banff sucks. I already hate Banff. So now I'm going to Banff to make myself feel better. And it's like, this is not helping. First of all, this is not helping. Because I already have like this negative view of Banff from last year. So last year in Banff, I went to Banff. I got same thing happened. I did not pre-book a campsite. I get the last campsite available. And it was a cancellation. So I actually thought, they told me there was no campsites. And I was going to have to get an authentic, which is like a yurt, for like $140 a night. Which at first I was like, oh no, I'll just camp somewhere else. And I thought about it, I was like, no, it's better if I just pay for the authentic. And then I looped around and they're like, oh, we actually have a cancellation, so we do have a spot. So I got the campsite. Campsite sucked. The next day, I hiked Johnston Canyon, which is actually a decent hike, but there's just so many people. So it's like kind of a bummer to be around that many people. And then, what did I do? Oh, then I hiked to the Plain of Six Glaciers Tea House. So you drive up to Lake Louise, which you should probably take the bus. Parking is $32. It's a pain. Yeah, parking's $32. It's a pain. Then I hiked to the Plain of Six Glaciers Tea House, which is a great hike. But then I got to the tea house, and the tea house was closed. They say it's open till 4. I got there at like maybe 3:30, maybe even a little, maybe like 3:20. And I busted my ass to get there. I pushed it because I wanted a sandwich from the Plain of Six Glaciers Tea House. And I get there, it's closed. It's closed early. It's like, well, fuck Banff. So that was my experience the year before. So I had a sour taste in my mouth. This time I go, and I'm trying to like have a more positive thing. And then I spiral out after missing my campsite. So I go up to Banff to collect my thoughts. And it's like just the worst, just the worst vibes. I don't really know what to say. What a bummer of a day. I don't know, man. Anyways, from there on out, actually, so once I decided it was my last day, I guess this will be spoilers for what's coming up on the channel. But there's, once I decided I was done, I went up to, I went to Jasper. That's where I had to go. That was the final thing I had to do on this trip, was I had to go to Jasper. This whole trip started in Jasper. It didn't start in Jasper. It was originally planned around me going to Jasper. But after the fire, all that changed. So then it's like, to make this trip, to round it out, I had to go to Jasper. So once I spiraled down in Banff, I realized I was ready to go home, but I had to go to Jasper first. So my next video, I might have another video before then. I go to Jasper, and then we see all the damage of the forest fires, which really does put your things into perspective when you are upset because you're tired and it's windy. And then there's other people that have lost houses, and they're probably just as sad as you for real reasons. It does put things into perspective. But that's where I go after this. And it was awesome, actually, to go up to Jasper and see it. Like I said, it brought me full circle, put things into perspective, and it was nice to do. Before I went up there, though, I camped at the lake after this main campsite in Banff. I spent a night in the Lake Louise campsite. And the wind was back. I don't know if the wind ever left, or I think there was a day. Man, I can't even remember now. The wind left. Maybe I was there for 2 days. I can't even remember. But there was a windstorm when I was at Lake Louise. And it blew trees down in the campsite. It crushed. I shouldn't say crush. Crush is a pretty extreme word. But trees had fallen on at least 2 RVs. One was like, I'm going to do air quotes, crushed. It had fallen, and it had crushed enough that there was a literal hole in the side of somebody's RV. And then I went to talk to them, like, where are you guys from? They're from the Netherlands. And it's like, they were on a 4-week trip to Canada, and a goddamn tree fell on their RV. It's like, man, what a Canada vacation story. A tree fell on your RV in Lake Louise. Like, that's awesome. Not really, but it's also a rental, so it's not really their problem. But yeah, there's like trees scattered all through all through that campsite, and then at least a few RVs got hit. Pretty wild. Again, it puts you in perspective that even though you're sad and cranky because you are tired and it was windy, it could always be worse. But anyways, from there I headed up to Jasper, and yeah, I actually recommend watching that video. When I put it out, I think it's going to be interesting. It was crazy. Man, I don't think I should get too far into it, but it was crazy because half the town looks like, I want to say, a war zone. I've never been to a war zone. And ultimately, it was like 350 houses that burned. To describe it as a war zone is probably unfair to war zones. War zones are a lot bigger and, whatever, way bigger. But that side of town, it was just straight, like, it was gone. Everything was burned. It was gone. That one side of town. But then on the other side of town, it was almost totally normal. I literally went out for tacos on the town. Went out for tacos. The restaurant had just opened. And a limited menu, but tacos, I had tacos. And there were people out on the town. People were walking their dogs. And it was a pretty wild experience. But anyways, that's for next day. This one is all about the other stuff. I mostly wanted to tell you the story about the lady and her toxic femininity hitting me on the trail. Man. Anyways, that's pretty much that. That's the end of this podcast. I feel like it was rambling about nothing. So maybe next one I'll have a guest on and we could talk about something. I think it would just be better with a guest and we could share ideas instead of just randomly talking. But, yeah, I think that's the end of this episode. Feel free to wish me happy birthday. And don't go to Banff. But anyways, peace.